Walking along a path at the roots of Pikes Peak, you take a fork in the road towards the Anselm Society Digital Pub. Inside is a raucous conversation on the arts, faith, and, well, the Headless Horseman sort of pacing back and forth outside our window. In the corner by the fire are three people. One of them is casting a side-eye at that strange candle burning in the corner, and that is me, your co-host, Christina Brown. Welcome to Believe to See, a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. Here at Believe to See, we explore the relationship between faith, art, and storytelling. Our goal is to connect the great story, the great stories, and our own stories so that we can better understand what it means to live with a Christian imagination. Today finds us sitting cozily in Mandy's living room on an October evening, sipping some wine, looking out the windows into the chilly darkness, noticing that Headless Horseman, and talking about witches and goblins and jack-o'-lanterns. It's very atmospheric. But if you were raised like I was, the mentioning of these things might give you a little pause. However small, because those are not, quote, wholesome creatures, and they, quote, invite darkness into a world where we Christians ought to bring light. But is that really what we're doing when we participate in the revelries of Halloween? Well, I suppose that partly depends on how you do it. But in today's episode, we're going to talk a bit about it. What exactly is Halloween anyway? And why does the holiday exist? Where do these traditions come from? And how ought Christians engage with the holiday today? And of course, joining me in this discussion are my co-hosts, Matthew and Mandy. Hello, you two.
Trying to get into the mood for the spooky episode.
I can report Matthew does still have his head, so he is not the aforementioned horseman. Also, there's no horse.
Oh, that Brom Bones guy, though, he seems a little shaky.
Yeah, a little shaky.
Anywho,
you can tell listeners that we're having way too much fun with this.
I do think Winston looks a little bit like a jack-o'-lantern.
he does.
He's got the giant eyes.
So cute.
You should get him one of the, you know how some people get like their dog's costumes? He would make a perfect Ewok from Star Wars.
I would like to invite you to attempt to put anything on the dog.
That's fair.
Yeah,
Note
fair
he
point.
doesn't even wear a collar.
That's
fair point.
I have wanted to do the Ewok, but
Winston, all that Ewok potential going to waste.
he's a naked Ewok. It's fine.
Oh, good times. So this is a fun, just opener question. Were you guys allowed to go trick-or-treating as kids?
I was. And when I was trick-or-treating back in the olden days, when I was little, it was the 70s because I was born in 1969. Uh-huh. And so when I was trick-or-treating, it was, I don't know if you guys are even aware of this necessarily, but there were all these scares about razor blades in the candy. And so it used to be, they used to give out apples on Halloween, but then they stopped.
Then we realized people, stop putting syringes and razor blades in these apples, people.
Exactly. And so that was like my mom.
We've all been there. You bite into an apple, it's like, I got a razor blade one.
Yep. So I still don't even know if that ever happened.
No,
probably never.
I can tell you without having researched it, no, it never happened.
That's the first urban legend that impacted my life. But so we would have, my mom would always check all the candy. Mm-hmm. But it was funny because our next door neighbor, Barbara Mulligan, would make homemade cookies for Halloween. And my mom always felt bad.
She kept smuggling razor blades in it, doggone
I know, but my mom always felt bad because she's like, I know.
Barbara Mulligan, she was
I know. That Barbara Mulligan, dun, dun, dun. No, but my mom always felt bad because she's like, all these families are just throwing away Barbara's cookies. So, but no, I was totally allowed to go trick-or-treating, but that's my main memory is being like suspicious of the candy and
for sure.
And Barbara Mulligan's persimmon cookies. They were persimmon.
And now the big urban legend is people giving like fentanyl and other drugs to your trick-or-treaters.
Yeah.
Again, listeners, in case you're worried, that does not happen. There's a 0% chance your child will be given free drugs by a drug dealer. Because drug dealers aren't going to give free samples to 8-year-olds who won't give them any more money.
That is a good point.
The free samples.
You are quite safe.
It's a marketing thing, and that's not good.
You are very safe.
Unwise.
So for me, it was interesting because if you look at the demographics of how I grew up. You would have thought I'd be a good candidate for not celebrating Halloween. Like my grandma, she grew up in this very evangelical household in like the little Swedish ghetto of Chicago. You know, that's the sort of thing where you could see like these very pious immigrants being suspicious of these. But no, my mom's family, my family, we all grew up with Halloween. My grandpa Bob was a great lover of old-timey Universal Studios monster movies. So every year we'd get together and watch Dracula and the Wolfman.
I was going to ask, would that be like the Thing
Creature
and
from the
Blob?
Black Lagoon.
Oh, wow.
I remember Wolfman. That was
Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, which is actually better than the original.
Oh.
So yeah, we always grew up with it, even though you could make a demographic case for us not, but we did.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I actually was one of the ones who was not allowed. Yeah, I was just thinking through it now. It's so interesting because we had the same razor blade situation. I remember my siblings and I would sit in the car around Halloween time, and we just like imagine how someone could slip a razor blade into a candy bar wrapper without it being opened. Right. we would try to think like,
or
how
get it
does
into an
happen?
apple. Let's think through that logistically, people.
Yeah, it's really funny. My parents were great. I mean, I grew up in a Christian household, evangelical household, and we did do some really great alternative things. Like we did. We will get into this, but you know, All Saints Day is the next day, and so we celebrated Halloween as All Saints Eve, which it actually is. And our church did this fantastic alternative. A lot of churches do. But this one I still argue was the best ever because it had a hayride with like lanterns and in the parking.
Were the lanterns carved into fun faces, or was that too edgy?
Oh, unfortunately, it was just paper bags with those lights, you know, in the dark, how you line them along a road.
Yeah, like with votives.
Right.
I see.
Matt's like, no, I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
So they had like a whole bunch of games inside, mazes, prizes, cakewalks. And then, you know, you came home with a bag of candy at the end that was like stuffed to the brim. You could dress up as anything you wanted, although my parents always made us dress as saints. It's awesome. True. It's so fantastic. And
you can do some really gruesome stuff.
I know, it's true.
Yeah,
you
pull out the Saint
I mean,
Sebastian and just be covered like with arrows like you're a pincushion.
Or were
Yes, dress
you a
yourself in
beheaded
flames.
saint?
Yes.
I mean,
How about
Exactly.
Saint Bartholomew? He was sorry, listeners, but this is a hagiography. Okay,
It's true. Yeah.
Saint Bartholomew was supposedly flailed alive, so his skin was removed from his flesh. So
There you go.
there's these icons where you see Saint Bartholomew just with all these like red exposed muscle, with his skin slung over his shoulder like a towel.
So, Christina, were you allowed to be like the scary dead saint, or did you have to be a living saint? Or not a living, but you know, did you have to portray them in their health?
With
You
the
know, I don't
instruments of their
think
martyrdom.
that never actually came up. So I don't know. Because a saint was also defined largely as, you know, Christians following the Lord.
Right.
So
So you could even be like Corey Ten Boom.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So my brother was...
Oh, that would be cute. You could totally do your hair like Corey Ten Boom. The little updo. Anyway,
It's so cute.
Sorry.
Yeah, my brother was Dr. Livingston, I presume.
Ah,
I still don't even know.
Okay,
who
that
Dr.
is
Livingston
adorable.
but yeah, he had the pipe and the pith helmet. It was very funny.
yeah.
But anyway, but then we did a church service, and the children's choir would sing, like for the church service for the All Saints Eve service, and
What
then we
songs
would
would you sing?
Well, there's a number of good ones, but it was an Anglican church, so we sang like, of course, for all the saints who from their labors rest.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
that one? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then there's what's the other one? I always forget it.
Maybe it'll come
One
to
was
you.
a doctor, and
Oh.
one was a priest, and one was a something, and
I don't know.
They
that
were
one.
all of
I think
them
that's the
saints.
start of a joke.
No, I know it sounds
doctor,
like
they walk
it.
into
A
a
doctor and
bar?
a priest walk into a
They
bar.
did. They walked into a
It
bar.
does sound like that, right? It's about like the sainthood of modern day people. Like one was a
Okay.
doctor, one was a priest, one was
Oh, but they were still saints.
they were still saints.
Oh, I
yeah.
like that.
So, and then
Okay.
All Saints Day, the dance team at church would do a liturgical dance.
So
Wow.
question for
Yeah.
you, Christina.
Yes.
When did you start celebrating Halloween?
Okay, well, first I have to tell you guys a joke because I think the
Okay.
listeners will enjoy
See,
it.
she was starting a joke.
Oh man.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I guess I should say not a joke, but a funny story. Okay, so I was very, well, I don't know. I was an oldest child, very, very full of idealist notions. And one year I was Mary, right? I just became Mary. I wore the hood thing and, carried my baby doll, and I was very excited. I was probably 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And the next year I decided to be Ruth from the Bible. And so I carried a basket with some wheat in it.
Yeah, gleaning.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
My costume was very, very similar, right?
Yeah.
But as one can imagine, because I was trying to dress historically accurately because I was an oldest child and my dad loved history. and one of the boys in the choir that I detested somehow detested me too.
Was he Boaz?
No. No, that would have been funny.
Awkward.
That would have been so funny.
Don't touch his feet.
Don't touch his feet.
Sorry.
So he... Okay, that was really good.
Thank you very much.
So this boy leans over to another one of his friends and says, oh, look, she's Mary again.
And did you let him have it? This is not a baby. This is a basket of wheat.
No, in my head I did.
Oh, okay.
I was way too outraged.
You were too outraged to
say anything. I was too shy.
Okay.
I was too proper. I didn't say anything out loud.
Oh my gosh.
But yes, I remember I carried that bitterness for years.
Apparently. No, I'm just kidding.
I still just remember it. And anyway,
that is funny.
The look of disdain on his face. Anyway, so yes, but that was my Halloween experience as a kid.
That's your welcome to Halloween experience.
That is my welcome to Halloween experience. So, yeah. And then, of course, we were asking if we let our kids go trick-or-treating. I'm assuming the answer was yes for you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I tell my favorite Halloween costume I ever did for Emmy?
Yes.
And I'm very proud of myself because I thought of it myself. Emmy wanted to be really comfortable because she was 10 and she's, a lot of Halloween costumes aren't comfortable.
Yeah.
And I am not a crafty person by any means. So we were trying to think of something. And then I said, I know. You can go as Static Cling. So she wore her favorite comfortable, legging, stretchy pants and her sweatshirt. And then I just pinned socks and bounce sheets to her clothes and her hair.
Wow.
And everyone knew what she was.
That is hysterical.
It was awesome.
Oh,
dude.
That was
my best costumes growing up. One of them was in middle school. You know how middle school boys, some boys shoot up, some are still super short?
Yeah.
I was super short in middle school.
No
One of
way.
my best friends was super tall. But we decided we'd go together as a two-headed alien. So we got under a huge coat. We each had the same alien mask.
Oh, that's
But he was
great.
a full head taller than me. We were waddling along.
Oh my
that's
God.
But then
that's
in the year 2000, October 2000, me and my brother decided to be topical. So he was George W. Bush and I was Al Gore. We went around that neighborhood.
Oh, that's so
And
funny.
did you brag about
And
inventing
it's Colorado
the internet?
Springs, so he got more candy than I did. But that's okay. It's okay.
Did you brag about inventing the internet?
Oh man, I as it was going on, I just remember thinking this was a mistake for this neighborhood.
Oh,
I really
that's
shouldn't
funny.
be doing this.
That's really funny.
I have a really cute picture. Now I'm sorry. I won't tell
We're all
of them.
waxing
But
nostalgic.
I'm
We
just
should
remembering
probably.
that. So Bethany was actually born October 25th, and we did take her out trick-or-treating, but she was a pea in a pod. So she was in a little green pea pod thing, and she was in the stroller, and she was so tiny, people thought she was Emmy's doll.
That's adorable.
But then the next year, Bethany was Blue, like the dog, Blue's Clues.
Oh.
And Emmy is all about comfort because once again, Emmy, we just found her some khakis and a green and green striped shirt. And so she was Steve.
Oh, that's
So they were
There
Steve
we
and
go.
Blue.
clever.
There we go.
There
They
it
were
is.
very into the coordinating costumes for a while. But anyway.
Now, one final anecdote I think will transition us back. I was actually, my original due date was November 1st.
Okay.
And
Oh,
my
safe
so my
day.
mom had lots of people at her church saying, I will pray your child is not born on Halloween, because apparently this would like taint me for life, having like this mark of being born on Halloween. So
Well,
that was
actually,
definitely an element in our church, at least among some members of our church growing up.
Bethany's due date was October 24th, which was the day of our church's Harvest Festival, which is similar to what Christina was talking about that her church would do. And so I had my very first contractions at the Harvest Festival. And we were like, we got to peace out. And we went home and then we went to the hospital. So
I love it.
So back to the people, back to the talking points and the anti-Halloween talking points.
Your first question was too much fun.
It was. We were way too nostalgic, but that's okay.
Sorry, me and Mandy are both very pro Halloween.
Yeah.
No,
I like the fun costumes. Like
they are so fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Mandy, we're jumping to the conclusion here. We don't want to. We want to set the foundation first. Why do we like Halloween? Okay, go ahead, Christina.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, first we want to ask, why does the holiday exist at all? Because if you think about it, okay, it's technically not even like an observed holiday. So people don't get off of work. It's not like a national holiday.
Right.
And yet it is like what is it, like one of 4 holidays that people decorate for. And I think it's in competition with Christmas for the most decorations. When people decorate their homes and stuff. So it's a big deal in America.
It's a lot of people's favorite holiday.
It is a lot of people's favorite holiday. Yep. So anyway, why does it exist? What is it?
You tell us.
So let's set the scene with sort of the folk belief that I think a lot of the anti-Halloween crowd would have, right? I believe the anti-Halloween crowd would say that this all goes back to hazy Celtic rituals.
Yep.
We all know you can't trust the Celts, right? And so these Irishmen would get around, and there'd be lots of goblins and ghouls, ghosts coming over from the other side, so you had to appease them and dress into costumes to trick them or scare them away. This is sort of like the folk etymology of Halloween that's passed down in a lot of those circles. I'm guessing, Christina, you would take issue with that sort of folk tradition, though.
I think I don't take issue with it at all. I think there are a lot of reasons why it becomes associated with that.
Well, I would take. Okay, keep going.
Oh yeah. No, you're good. So basically, a lot of people think, and a lot of Christians, I think, don't want Halloween as part of a celebration because it was a pagan holiday, and at least that's what they say. Unlike what Christmas was, it wasn't like a takeover of, how Christians took over pagan holiday of Christmas. That's how they, So Halloween did not do that. And so in a lot of people's minds, no, it's still pagan.
Oh, so they think, so to them, hey, we redeemed Christmas.
Right.
But Halloween remains unredeemed.
And evil. And,
I remember some really weird song about, I don't even know how to say it. Samhain or some.
Yes, Samhain is weirdly,
Samhain,
that's how you pronounce
because
it.
Because it's Celtic, probably.
Yes, exactly.
Letters mean nothing.
It's spelled Samhain, you're correct.
I know, but letters mean nothing
Samhain
to the
whatever,
Celts. Anyway, but I remember, I don't know if this was just in weird Southern California Christian radio, but all around Halloween, they would play this weird song that I really feel like was self-recorded by some, I keep using the word weird, but it's appropriate, guy who was the whole song was telling the story of Samhain. And it was the whole song was meant to deter us from participating in Halloween at all.
Right. The interesting thing is there are similarities to the Samhain or Samhain festival, the Celtic pagan festival.
Right. So you sent us an article to look at, and that was the first I'd heard that it really didn't have anything to do with Halloween. It's just similar in festival.
Right.
And time of year, maybe?
Well, okay. So time of year, yes and no. Because Halloween. Okay, first, I suppose we should probably go into the origin of the name Halloween.
Okay.
Right. So the name Halloween is actually a contraction of the English expression All Hallows Eve.
Right.
So hallowed, and it takes
Evening,
place
sort of.
It takes place on the eve of All Saints' Day, which is celebrated by the church.
And that's why it's hallowed.
Exactly. That's why it's hallowed.
Right.
And and so All Hallows Eve, it was traditionally actually instituted by the Roman Catholic Church in spring. So ironically, the fact that people claim them to be like
the same thing.
Yeah, and claim that Christians are celebrating evil by like All Saints Day, they're not the same thing. So eventually it was moved to the November time period because All Saints Day, All Souls Day is also after.
Okay.
But anyway, that's where the actual name comes from, All Hallows Eve.
Right.
So
and how did they celebrate that? With like bonfires and stuff, right?
Originally All Saints Day.
Okay.
Or you're asking All Saints Day?
No, Hallows Eve.
Actually some similar traditions. I mean, definitely Okay,
I think me and you might disagree on this because you are just a more charitable person here, Christina. Because you're giving the Samhain conspiracy theorists some credit. I think it's a very silly argument to think that there's anything intelligible between Samhain and Halloween. A few reasons for that.
Sure.
First off, like you said, Samhain is a Celtic festival. So the Celts during this time were on Ireland, this isolated bit in the far reaches of the known world, right?
So they had no influence.
Whereas All Saints Day started in Rome.
Yeah, exactly.
In the Western Roman Church.
And it was St. Patrick who brought Christianity to the
Those things didn't have a lot to do with each other. There's no reason to believe that the Roman Church would be like, hey, there's these barbarians on the far corners of the world.
Let's do what they're doing.
And also, we don't know a lot about Samhain. Here's a lot of different rumors get spread around throughout the ages, a lot of garbled stuff, but here's what we know. One, it was in the harvest time, so it's a harvest festival.
Yes.
Oh, harvest festival. Are those sinister now?
Right.
Two, it involved bonfires. That's all.
So did St. Patrick.
Like
Exactly.
hell. It's hell. No, I'm kidding.
we have this festival around the harvest time that involves bonfires. Really has nothing to do with this Roman Latin holiday that starts in spring and then is eventually moved over into the rest of the church. So it is to your credit that you're giving this argument the benefit of the doubt. I think it is very silly, and I don't have a lot of patience for it.
I think she's just explaining the tenuous thread that they try to attach. But it snaps.
It is a bit tenuous, honestly.
Well, it's also very similar to there's these sort of internet you'll see like internet atheists post these sort of silly memes about how like Christmas was a pagan holiday, Easter is a pagan holiday. When you really dig into it, they're very bad and ahistorical and silly arguments. There's no reason to believe that the Christmas celebration had any significant relation to any of the the Saturnalia or whatever. Right. Same thing with Easter. These are all I view all three of them as a piece. They're sort of modern origin myths built around a rumor and ahistoricism and cherry picking historical topics that people don't really know about.
Sure.
Well, it sounds
I have very little patience for all three.
Sure.
Well,
I mean,
it
makes
sounds
sense
to me like outside of the church, it's very natural. And inside of the church too, but roll with me here. So for outside of the church, the markable events tend to line up with seasons. And so you have the harvest festival because of the harvest, and it's getting colder. So of course we're going to have bonfire.
It also was sort of celebrated as an ushering into the dark nights. Solstice, basically.
And then the solstices are big. And then in spring, of course you're going to celebrate spring because we're
new life.
Done with winter and there's new life. And whether they mean that in a pagan or atheistic way or a new life resurrection way. So
we all tread the same earth, people.
It's not that hard to see why there were it's coincidences. It's coinciding coincidences that we want to celebrate resurrection when new life is occurring, and the pagans were celebrating new life because spring is fun.
Exactly. And then you'll also see
it gets muddied.
You'll also see these threads, around, again, sort of conspiracy theory type stuff. They're like, the origin of the Christmas tree. Then there's like this folk myth.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, even if the Christmas tree is associated with the Norse Yule log. Who cares?
Also,
Like, who cares if the church, if like some missionary to the Norse are like, that's a dope tradition, let's steal that for our thing.
right.
They give it like a Christian meaning. Who cares?
Yeah, it's true.
Also, Yule logs of the chocolate variety are delicious.
They are so delicious.
Anyway.
So delicious. But we digress.
But yeah, very much. Sorry, bonfires.
Don't get me started
No,
on. So sorry.
No, it's
Yeah.
true. No, I think you guys, to that point, I mean, it's very good. I think what I love, and I think just even more just me like getting into a lot of the garden and just like the gardening and the earth stuff and then the soils, all the things
seasons.
that the seasons really, the things that I'm kind of learning even cross cultures is that we all, human history, like doesn't matter when we lived, when Christ was introduced to that particular area, like all of the human history followed the seasons with celebrations and marking it, right?
Right.
And so the Celts in the Samhain festival, like they would believe that there was a thin place. It's a darkness. There's a changing. You feel it in the air. You can sense it. They would think that like the Mexicans celebrated the Day of the Dead. They believed like ancestors would come. They would like actually leave out food and plates of hospitality. Like it wasn't all this like horribly evil.
They're not worshiping the dead. They're honoring the past.
Right. Although I'm sure there was some uncouth
We don't wanna
things
whitewash
happening
it.
on.
No, and that is a larger point, right? Like
Yeah.
as Christianity spread and is spreading in the current day, that's one of the challenges when you try to figure out how does this culture, who has its own traditions, its own festivals, its own ceremonies, what happens when Christianity is introduced to that? And sometimes Christians have the view that you basically need to burn everything down, sweep it away, and start over, right? All of what you had before is evil.
Right.
Then there's this other strand. It's like, let's take what you have. There's good things and bad things about this culture, as there are in all cultures.
Yep.
And we'll get rid of the bad stuff. And this other stuff, we can sort of baptize it, so to speak.
Right.
And sort of meet the people where they are. And doing that can oftentimes be very difficult. There's oftentimes a lot of gray areas, and sometimes the pendulum can swing too far the other way, where you get into more of a syncretism. But I think it is worthwhile to figure out how to baptize different cultural aspects, especially if they mean a lot to a people that has just embraced Christianity.
Well, I think there is a overcorrection in and a misinterpretation of what it means to be set apart. And like the Southern Baptist denomination, the whole reason, a lot of their prohibitions when they were established were specifically to make themselves visibly and lifestyle-wise different from culture. That's why there's a prohibition against dancing. Because other people danced and drinking and,
going to
and
the movies.
Right.
My grandma, and again, like my grandma was raised in a culture a lot like that. She, EV Free Swedish Church is very similar. She grew up not playing cards.
Right.
Playing cards.
Southern Baptists
because
don't play
they
cards.
called them the devil's Bible.
Right.
And there wasn't any particular reason she could articulate later.
Exactly.
Like she even like later on, like my mom played cards. We all played cards. She was still uncomfortable with it just because that's how she was raised, even though she knew in her head, like, whatever. But those things can be powerful.
And so, but really, it's, if you really boil it down, it's kind of a spirit of fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also, I think, I really liked this quote from Stephen Wedgeworth, who is an Anglican priest in South Bend, Indiana, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. He wrote an article in the Ad Fonte Journal. And he says to us who are trying to figure out what Halloween really is, he says, you should also be aware that All Souls Day followed All Saints Day in the church. And the combination of these days was often treated as a unit in medieval Europe. And this is obviously very true. This, and not paganism, is the real, quote, source for Halloween's emphasis on death. Each of these days, in slightly different ways, celebrated the lives of Christians who had departed this world. And these days established the memorialization of the dead as a key part of Halloween. Still, they did this in a nearly exclusively liturgical way, making use of prayers, candles, and various ideas about purgatory. So it really was, interestingly, in his opinion anyway, in the research that he did, like more the Christians who made Halloween more about the dead than it was the pagans, which is
that's
fascinating.
really interesting.
Isn't that fascinating?
So I have one final kind of grumpy thought before I move on to responding directly to your comment. Also, I just do think if you want to look at a group that I disagree with, but at least is consistent on this matter, it's the Puritans. They didn't celebrate any holidays. They thought Christmas was pagan, right? Because they're taking the logic of a lot of the folks in the anti-Halloween crowd in taking it to the logical conclusion, right? Pagan, putting all these days, setting them apart. So if you want to make the argument with Halloween, I'd say, well, if you're going to be consistent, go full Puritan. All right, grumpy old man speech over. But responding to what you were saying directly then, I love that about Halloween and All Saints Day because, I grew up in a tradition. Like I said, we celebrated Halloween, but we were also in an evangelical free church that didn't really celebrate the liturgical calendar. So I didn't know anything about All Saints Day or All Souls Day. So that's something I've come to later, and it has greatly enhanced my appreciation for the whole Halloween season. Because it does, it shows the concept of the thin place. And again, I'm sure as it was expressed in a lot of pagan contexts, there'd be lots of troubling aspects to it.
Yeah.
But this is the thin place baptized, right?
Yeah.
It's viewed from with the Christian foundation, where it's the connection that we on earth, the church militant, have with the church triumphant, like the church.
That's such a great
So
phrase.
you have the connection with saints, like the known ones, you can look through history, and also just the ones in our own lives. Like I mentioned my grandparents recently, like they both passed away pretty recently. So that has made All Saints Day and All Souls Day a lot more poignant for me because it makes you think of people like them.
Right.
And that is all part and parcel. I'm thinking a lot about death and dead people on those days.
Right.
But again, through the Christian lens.
Yeah, and that's not a bad thing. It's so easy for us to glaze over death in our, I think, current culture because we're, well, first of all, it's so easy to do. We have so many like medicines and treatments, and we just aren't quite faced with death in the same way that they would have been, even in Celtic times, right?
Yeah, death is sterilized and institutionalized now.
Exactly.
You don't have your relative die in your home and then you have to remove the body, right?
Right, exactly. Oof, yeah. Even that, thinking that just gives me...
Yeah,
and yet that was just what you had to do. Yeah. So let's go into the whole concept of, like, and I was definitely told this growing up. Like, Christians are told often that Halloween, when we celebrate it, we're inviting darkness into the world. And sometimes even, we're doing devil worship just by celebrating and participating.
Right.
So,
even if you're dressed as Blue and Steve.
Nope, I was told that even participating in that way was still... So, but yeah, I mean, I understand, like, how you do want to sort of set yourself apart, kind of like you were saying, Mandy. You want to be careful, right? You want to be careful. And so this, I think, was overemphasized in ways that are untrue. However, what does it actually mean? What do we think of that? And what do we do with it?
Well, like I said before, I feel like a lot of it is a spirit of fear. I mean, I do, and that's not, there's a difference between caution and fear and wisdom and, I think some of the stuff we're talking about tonight is very revealing that the inclusion of the death imagery was really a Christian addition. So I think a lot of fear comes from ignorance anyway.
Sure.
So I think if we do what we're doing tonight, something like just really looking into, what is it and what does it mean to celebrate it? And then, of course, we need to draw lines because I I mean, I remember when I was taking the girls trick-or-treating one time. Emmy was Cinderella. And she was like 4 years old. And we went out and there was a guy walking around with the Scream costume. You know, that Scream face?
Yes.
And it was terrifying. And she wanted to stop trick-or-treating. That was it. We were going inside. And
I don't blame her.
I didn't either because it was scary.
Picture grown-up Christina now,
terrifying.
just seeing the mask like, I'm back in. See ya.
And there are some really legitimately scary costumes. And like you can, that's kind of sad when like a preteen or a teen is out there like with blood coming down them. And then there's some little
I think there's
girl.
horror and gore, and then there's ghouls and witches.
Yeah, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, but I don't think we need to be afraid of darkness per se, because I mean, it's part of God created darkness and light. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sort of spinning around.
Yeah, there's everyone for the Believe to See drinking game. Get ready to take a shot. There's a C.S. Lewis quotation. It was basically talking about how there's two extremes on this issue of like, spiritual warfare. There's the one side who thinks like, it's all made up, it's not real.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side that thinks there's like a devil lurking behind every chair and is always hyper vigilant about it. Either side are mistakes, and either side can be very harmful. I think the folks who are against Halloween tend to fall into there's a devil behind every door,
There
right?
you go.
Putting a candle in a jack-o'-lantern makes me think of the devil, and that makes it evil, right?
It ushers in evil spirits, right?
Exactly. You can see the other side, though, the one who thinks it's all just pretend, so who cares, also going off the rails, right?
Right.
Because, I think we all agree things that like actual witchcraft or occultism, that is very dangerous and you shouldn't mess with it. And it's very easy to go off the rails that way too. So keeping the center way, as so often the case in other things, I think is the way of wisdom and prudence here. But
There you go.
Some people are more inclined to go off the rails one way, some the other. Try to avoid going off the rails entirely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's interesting. The one thing that I hadn't thought about until doing more research on this holiday was that the Christian tradition of holidays in the liturgical calendar almost always begin the evening before. We have Christmas Eve and we have Saturday Vigil, right? We have for Easter, right?
Right.
So, and then the same was true with All Hallows Eve. Like it actually was a time where you began to observe that holiday. And so I was thinking about that and I was like, first of all, we think about, if we're told that like Halloween is inviting darkness and you think about, the Halloween revelries wait until darkness to begin, for obvious reasons. But you think about it and you think, wait a second, if this goes all the way back to Jewish times, right? Like Passover began at sundown the day before, right? It seems to me that it's more of saying God is the ruler of the day and the night. And we're not afraid to claim it. And if it really does begin in the evening, the day before, that is not something we ought to fear.
Yeah, that would be like saying Christmas Eve is inviting darkness.
Right.
But then you think about the tradition of lighting the candles. How is that? Why is it different just because it's...
I know, isn't that fascinating?
Well, and also I really feel like that's such a tenet of faith anyway. Like you think of all the periods of waiting and preparing and waiting on the Lord and remembering and being still, and that is illustrated by beginning the celebration in the quietness of evening the night before.
Right.
That kind of goes along with that aspect of the journey of faith in the first place.
Right.
So.
No, it's very true. Excuse me. And it's true that like the veil of darkness, like literal darkness, of course, is used to conceal all manner of evil. I mean, that's the whole point. I remember when my kids were like, why do the robbers always come at night? I was like, well, think about it. It's so much easier to hide when people can't see you, And so of course, like I think that's always important to consider anytime we consider evil, right? To think about there is a real element of darkness conceals all matter of evil. but I don't think it applies in this context. And I think the one thing that I love is that God is not afraid of darkness, like you said. He made it. Yeah. And I love the psalmist's words when he says, even the darkness is light to you.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite verses.
Even that song that you were asking what songs my church sang, like, in him there is no darkness at all. The night and the day are both alike. The Lamb is the light of the city of God. Yeah. That was one of the ones that came to mind. And sorry, I just butchered that. But
okay.
But I did butcher the beginning. But yeah, I think there is that element. I almost feel like the observation beginning with the Jewish calendar, right, was God's way of saying, do not fear, I rule the night just as I rule the day. So yeah.
And I think also the arguments, the article that a lot of this podcast is riffing on, right?
There's a couple of them. The Ad Fonte one was the one I was referring to just now. Yeah. The James Jordan does one, the sword and the
Yeah, so a lot of them go through sort of like the proof text that a lot of people say to try to, push back against anything Halloween. But a lot of like works of darkness, well, you're kind of begging the question because you're assuming that darkness means what you think it means.
Right.
And like the works of darkness is used in the context are like
sure.
Fornication, drunkenness, dissipation, all this stuff. It doesn't have much to do with dressing up as a ghost.
Right.
So we need to be very careful here and not importing the meaning we want into the text and then using that to make the point that we want.
Like avoiding the appearance of evil really is translated better. Avoid the form in the sense of embodying evil.
Right.
Yeah.
Not don't dance because people will think you care too much about your body and therefore you are a sexual beast.
Right. Exactly. You got to look at the text, people.
Right.
Sexual beast.
Sorry.
She's not wrong. I think
dancing may lead to other things. You don't know. That's what I was told in my Southern Baptist church.
Along those lines about sort of smuggling in other meanings, something that I found very interesting in the assigned reading that you gave to us, Christina, was how a lot of the traditions that we think of as being like, oh, this is just Halloween, they're actually very recent in particular to America.
Yeah.
Like, I think if we have some listeners in like other countries, there could be some things we're talking about. You're like, what?
What are they talking about?
Yeah, and that's sorry. We're Americans. We're like fish who don't know we're wet. Okay, so like something similar like the jack-o'-lantern seems quintessentially Halloween. But think about it, people. The pumpkin is a North American plant. They didn't have it in Europe back in the day. That's a modern American invention. Trick or treating. That's pretty modern, and apparently the origins of it were all those darn kids, like groups of young boys, were making mischief on Halloween, and the mischief got out of hand. So the civic leaders were like, "What? Let's give them like constrained fun, controlled mischief. You can go to your neighbor's house and ask for candy, okay?"
Speaking of other countries, I was fascinated with the Guy Fawkes because I know about the Guy Fawkes night.
Guy Fawkes Day is great,
right? I know about that, but it didn't occur to me that.
Remember the 5th of November, treachery, gunpowder plot. I can think of no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
But like a lot of the misguided revelries, shall we say, came because of the Guy Fawkes. So a lot of this, again, is about dates coinciding and then it's overlapping and becoming part of one another's celebrations.
They're human urges, right? You see these sort of convergent evolution of a lot of these celebrations where we talked about lots of civilizations have a harvest festival. Lots of civilizations have a spring festival. Midwinter's Eve festival. These are major events of the season. The agriculture, same thing. Lots of different civilizations have this sort of day of mischief, this day of misrule where everything's all topsy-turvy, right? And people are allowed to sort of let loose and do crazy stuff that they usually wouldn't do.
Right.
In England, it takes the form of Guy Fawkes Day, which is a holiday built upon a crazy pro-papal terrorist trying and failing to blow up Parliament.
Yep.
That's what they
I
celebrate.
think if he had succeeded, they probably would not be celebrating.
Yeah. We got him. They almost got us, but we caught him. So let's all burn a bunch of stuff.
You know what?
In America, instead of Guy Fawkes Day, it took this form of like Halloween, where this is like our day where people go and make mischief. Sometimes it gets out of hand, obviously.
But then they were like, let's give them candy instead.
Exactly.
It's true. It's actually true. And
I know.
If we give the teenage boys sugar, maybe they'll stop setting fire to things and throwing eggs at my house.
Or not.
And ironically, even trick-or-treating and all of these traditions didn't even start until like the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Right.
They're
in
much
America.
more recent than we assume.
Much more recent.
Well,
yeah.
and interesting, a thought that just occurred to me when you were talking about the festivals, they're all about coming together. And isn't that's just another echo of how God created us, because God as Trinity is himself community. He is, Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So-
it's true.
Yeah, and there's actually several days, like even on the church calendar, with this sort of emphasis, this sort of like topsy-turvydom, mischief, celebration, everyone getting a little rowdy. There's 12th night, so last day of Christmas. There's Fat Tuesday. Obviously, people can take those too far and take them to unhealthy levels, right?
I'm not going to go to New Orleans
I'm not
for Fat
defending
Tuesday.
the behavior of tourists to New Orleans, okay?
Right.
But what I am saying is that there does seem to be these human needs where spontaneously, in independent cultures, you can see these celebrations like, let's all get together and let loose. Let's all get some mischief going.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such interesting stuff.
But I mean, it really is just, isn't that what we as humans just tend to do anyway? We take good things and then corrupt them.
Yes.
Why did I laugh
the
so heartily
question
at
is,
that?
where does the corruption begin? And let's
Yeah.
nip that in the bud. But that doesn't mean,
Sure.
to be set apart doesn't mean because really, if you think about, if we remove ourselves that much from culture, then we're missing out on community. Because I think of when the girls used to go trick-or-treating in another neighborhood that we lived in, there was this one house and all the kids knew to avoid the house because they did not give out candy. They gave out, can you guess?
Pamphlets.
Yes. They gave out pamphlets. And it was so funny because the other moms
You
and
can
I
give
we
out
would be
pamphlets and candy.
that is what the moms, we were always like, couldn't they at least give out like candy with the pamphlet? But
It's a lot easier to sell people.
It did not, I'm sure they felt like this was a much better thing to do, but all it did was just mark them as people who were unkind, ungenerous. And of course,
Stingy,
we know
yeah.
the gift of Jesus. Obviously that's a beautiful thing, but that's not the message
They
that was
weren't
being
communicating
conveyed.
that by what they were.
The message that was being conveyed is
Right.
you don't need candy, and fun is to be frowned upon, and
Yeah, and-
that's not of Jesus.
Yeah, and similarly, I legitimately love the trick-or-treating tradition, okay? Some of my most cherished childhood memories are trick-or-treating with my friends.
Yeah.
My kids are finally old enough where we can go trick-or-treating for a while without them getting tired right away.
And I love how
And-
your family always dresses up in theme. It is fantastic.
Super Mario theme this year.
Awesome.
I get to be Luigi.
Weren't you Wizard of Oz last year? And little Jane
a couple
was
years ago. 2 years ago. Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that because it gives you a chance to actually go visit your neighbors.
Yeah.
Talk to them, and it shows a modicum
Community.
of trust, right? Like
Yes.
we're all helping each other out. The whole neighborhood's flocking to our door. We're going around the neighborhood.
Yep.
We interact with people who we never do. That is why, dear listeners, if you are one of the people who have decided trick-or-treating's too dangerous, so you're doing trunk-or-treating, where instead of going around to the house in your neighborhood, you get with a close circle of friends from car to car in a parking lot. Please don't do that.
Yeah,
Grumpy
you're
old
missing
man.
out on
Please don't.
because that's so insular. I mean, honestly, a couple years ago, the trick-or-treating is how I found out that one of the neighbors had a baby, and then I was able to take her a meal the next week.
And also trunk or treaters, the things you're worried about are not going to happen. Nobody's going to give your child drugs for the reasons I explained earlier. Nobody's going to try to smuggle razor blades into your Snickers bar. It is safe. So you are depriving your children of something good and wonderful and beautiful. You're depriving yourself of community for irrational fears that have about as much chance of happening as you being struck to death by a meteor when you walk out to your mailbox.
That is grumpy old man.
I know. And along the lines of making it an open neighborhood opportunity, Peter and I sit on our porch and we'll have a little bonfire, haha. But, a safe, small propane one. And then it's, we can talk to the parents too. And I have friends from my church who they'll make this huge vat of apple cider and they give out cider too to the parents. Yeah. And it can be a community block party feel.
Yep. Oh, one time we were trick-or-treating and this one couple got this huge projector screen. It was just playing It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown on loop in their garage.
That's excellent.
It was so fun.
Oh, that's cool.
That's great. That's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I have my own little story to that, but I think I'll wait till the end for that because I think it does help wrap up. But I think these are all great points. So the other thing I want to... Oh, well, first of all, I wanted to also add that I also didn't realize this, but it wasn't until recently, 1798. Wow, 1978.
How
Where
old
did
are
that come
you,
from? I know.
Christina is 450 years old.
It wasn't until 1978 that the real gore and horror element started coming into Halloween, which was actually thanks to Hollywood and some of the films they were producing. Yeah. Right. So honestly, a lot of what we see now and what we're scared of in the the Saw and the Scream movies and people with the chainsaws dressing up.
Those are the scary costumes. They come from the movies.
Those are the scary costumes, and they come from movies that are actually quite different in what they're trying to do. Anyway, but I thought that would be interesting to some listeners as well. So it kind of turned it more into an adult's, the trick-or-treating part and holiday, Halloween parties into more of an adult, anyway. Yeah.
Oh, so to that point, so another excess. So, sorry, Christina. Christina's just getting around, I'm gonna dive in with my point. But to that point, another thing, you can see Halloween is getting more popular. Recent decades with adults, where you get up, you wear your sexy costumes, and you get together
to get drunk, really.
Yeah.
So that is another excess that is very recent and an obvious excess,
that's
right?
That's corrupt
But
thing.
Last year, it was so funny because me and my two oldest kids, we're all trick-or-treating in our neighborhood. We go to one house where it's this, this couple, they don't have any kids. They're just sort of youngish couple. We knock at their door, the porch light's on. They come out. They're already dressed in their costumes, right? And you can tell they're about ready to go to a rager party. And they look out, they're like, oh no, trick-or-treaters. So they're hold up. And then so they slam the door. I can see them rifling through their cupboards and stuff.
That's so
and
funny.
Eventually they come back out and they give each of my kids an instant package of hot cocoa mix.
That's adorable.
I bet your kids love that.
It was great. It was all right, bro, y'all are trying. All right.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Do you know
fantastic.
what? That's actually a good idea. That wouldn't be a bad idea. A little pack. Did your kids like that?
I don't think we ever used because hot cocoa mix was I really appreciated the effort.
That is funny.
That's
really cute.
Anyway, you were making an important point before I jumped in.
Oh yeah, no. I was just going for the last point that I kind of wanted to hit upon, which is honestly, why are goblins and witches and ugly things and involved in Halloween, even in the Christian tradition? Well, because it's a mockery of evil. And I think that's something that a lot of us don't even realize, that it was actually partly the church that did that. And that's what gargoyles are on Gothic churches. Very ugly creatures, goblin, demonic little things with ugly faces. And it wasn't just to ward off evil spirits. It was to say, no, we're going to laugh in the face of evil because Christ has defeated it. And so the idea of dressing your children in these kinds of costumes was a mockery of evil, not a welcoming of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's a great quote that I'm just going to read you. It's just like a real quick summary from a different article by the Sword and the Staff publication. And I really thought it was just a really great little summary. So here it is. The concept, the mockery that is, as dramatized in Christian custom is quite simple. On October 31st, the demonic realm tries one last time to achieve victory, but is banished by the joy of the kingdom. What is the means by which that demonic realm is vanquished? In word, mockery. Satan's great sin and our great sin is pride. Thus, to drive Satan from us, we ridicule him. This is why the custom arose of portraying Satan in a ridiculous red suit with horns and a tail. Nobody really thinks the devil looks like this. The Bible teaches us that he's a fallen arch-cherub. Rather, the idea is to ridicule him because he has lost the battle with Jesus, and he no longer has power over us. So
That's, it's interesting. My Southern Baptist church hated the images of him like that because they were like, it's not taking him seriously.
right.
But we should take him seriously insofar as believing he exists and he
course.
has intentions. But
Right.
on the other hand, we know he loses.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I was just gonna go big for a second.
Yeah, go for it. Please do.
And it's just this tension that we see in this sort of microcosm, right? Whether mostly American Christians want to celebrate Halloween, but the core principles here is something that the church has been bandying back and forth like from the beginning, pretty much. Like, what is the relationship of Christianity to the surrounding culture? You can look at almost the first century, Justin Martyr, who was really well versed in the Greek and Roman classics. Really drew heavily from the classics in his defense of Christianity. He's like, no, this is great. Like Homer, all of this stuff, it's really helpful. Homer, Plato, Aristotle. And other folks like Tertullian have said rhetorically, what does the church have to, what does Jerusalem have to do with Athens? Basically, get rid of all of it. It's useless. And you can see how either one could be taken to an unhealthy extreme, but the wrestling with how do we take what is good from this culture, whether it's Norse myths, Greek myths, American Halloween celebrations, and how do we make sense of that through a Christian perspective? It is a constant struggle. It's one without an easy, precise definition. But I think the most important thing is not to go to either extreme, because I think either extreme can get you to some unhealthy places pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We don't have a ton of time to spend on this, but I also wanted to mention, because I always forget this for some reason, even though my family is very reformed, but October 31st is also Reformation Day.
Right.
And the reason it's Reformation Day is because that is the day that Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the church. Dun-dun-dun-dun. What was the church called?
All Saints.
All Saints Church. What?
Full circle.
Full circle. And yes, he did that on purpose. So it's very interesting to realize how all of these things are really interconnected.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to leave that aside. He did it very purposely, very much saying like, what are the abuses that we are doing against the saints and the people and the souls of this church? Like, I want us to take seriously Christianity and what it means here and now. Like, I'm sorry, here now and then next life. So All Saints Day, All Souls Day. So, and so I also really wanted to include this small little anecdote. So when I know it's fantastic. I just love my son. I love my kids adorably, but my son is the one I was thinking of. So as I was getting ready to come to this session, I was printing out my notes, and Edmund came with me. He's 8, and he came into the office. We were sharing some apple slices with pumpkin pie.
No razor blades.
No razor blades.
Okay,
no razor
good.
blades. Pumpkin pie spice. Dribbled on top. It's very delicious. Anyway, and so he saw my notes, and he's like, what? Why should Christians celebrate Halloween? Or no, what is it? What was the title that I wrote? Oh, what should Christians think about Halloween?
Right.
And so he sees the title and he's like, huh? What? And I said, well, yeah, buddy. I said, well, it's an important question. What should we think about Halloween?
Yeah.
And so I was telling him, I was like, a lot of Christians have thought this. This is kind of what we're kind of talk about tonight.
Right.
And then so I said, but buddy, I have something to read to you from this that you're going to love. And so this is the quote. This is the quote I read my son. Again, this is from the Sword and the Staff. I said, the gargoyles that were placed on the churches of old had the same meaning. They symbolized the church ridiculing the enemy. They stick out their tongues and make faces at those who would assault the church. Gargoyles are not demonic. They are believers ridiculing the defeated demonic army. I emphasize this because of my son. Thus, the defeat of evil and demonic powers is associated with Halloween. So I love it because when I did that, Edmund just has this look and he goes, yes.
Oh,
and
that's
he
so
does this
cute.
little like fist pump. Yes.
Yeah.
And he's just like, yeah, like that's what it is. We dress up like that because Satan was defeated. He lost the battle and we should know that.
Oh, that's so cute. I love that.
It was so
It's not just cute, it's sweet and
It was profound
pure.
too.
Yeah.
Because like I don't like, it's not something that I've actively gone about, like, purposely saying, son, this is what Halloween is. Although we have had some conversations about it, but, like, in the past. But it was just so cool to hear my son say, well, yeah, duh, because he lost. Like, we are going to make fun of that bastard, basically. My word, not his.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's very significant in the way we look at Halloween. And I was just so pleased to see that my son has kind of taken that up anyway. Like, kind of like you said, like
the
church
understanding is there.
And the understanding of like, we are here as like, victors of Christ, and we're waging a war, and yet the war is won. And so we don't need to fear, kind of like you were saying, Mandy.
Yeah.
So, yes. So anyway, the original question really is, what should Christians think about Halloween? And I do not have, unlike Grumpy Old Man, a rule that you must follow.
I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm just saying there's no good reason for you not to.
Well, I think
There's
you're
a
saying
difference here.
Yeah, I think what Matt is saying is
I'm just teasing.
No, I know, but I'm just saying I understand what you were saying, Matt, that you it's the reason behind. Like if you're saying no out of fear that's misplaced, then you're encouraging people not to fear in that way.
Well, speaking of, this is a summary from Stephen Wedgeworth, the Anglican priest, on what he thinks Christians should think about Halloween. He says, Christians don't have to be scared of Halloween. All of the superstition is just that, superstition. It isn't true. The witches and the goblins have always been fictional, and Halloween need not have any demonic association whatsoever. Of course, since Halloween is an ordinary worldly thing, it is capable of attracting all sorts of ordinary worldly sins. Mature Christians will certainly want to be aware of this. The most obvious sins associated with Halloween today are overt sexualization and thoughtless gore and violence. Christians shouldn't dress immodestly or trivialize pain and suffering on Halloween for the same reason that they shouldn't do this on any other day of the year. It's improper and unloving. So basically he's saying, don't make Halloween the thing and ignore the fact that the evil that goes on and the unfortunate excuses people use Halloween for, to ignore the fact that those in and of themselves are wrong things, and they happen not just on Halloween. And so you can't see them in that same light. And so it's not here, but he goes on to say, like, yes, of course, generally vaguely follow your conscience, but he just says, don't be afraid of it. And look at it as it really is and as it really was meant to be. And with that, honor Christ in all you do.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of how he closed the article. And I just really loved that. I was like, in all you do, honor Christ. Well, there it is. That's kind of the guiding principle right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matt, did you have a closing comment?
No, I think you summed the situation up better than I could, and much less grumpily than I would have.
Well, we can go for Stephen summing it up.
There we go.
Yeah, he was the guy who did it. But I did promise to tell my quick story about the community.
Yes.
Okay. So you guys know that I did not grow up celebrating Halloween. I already made that.
Right.
Yeah. So, but of course, this is what you might not have known. Brian did. So even though we were very much raised in very similar households, both homeschooled, different sides of the country, but, very similar. Mm-hmm. His parents had no such, feelings about Halloween in the way my parents were superstitious.
Qualms.
So no qualms. So, of course, our kids trick or treat because Brian has no problem with it. And I was like, okay, I guess I have to take a really good hard look at this now.
Yeah.
Excuse me, which is why we do. But it's so interesting because the first time we went trick or treating with our kids, I actually had a really good time. And I thought, is this what trick or treating is meant to be? And I was like, I see. There's something about the community getting together, and there's something about knowing your neighbors, and there's something about you're the person who's always lived in this house. And it's festive. People were giving out hot cider. There were adults talking to the kids by name, and then there were adults saying, "I love your costume," you know. And then it's just. There was something so beautiful, and then you would see friends. Oh, hi! Walking in your neighborhood, and I love your costume. And
it's a block party.
It's basically a block party, and there are people that gave out free Beanie Babies because they just had to get rid of them for my kids, and my kids still play with them.
I'm holding on to my Beanie Babies.
Do you know who loves Halloween the most in this house? Mabel, our little poodle, because she loves kids. And when the kids come to the door, she gets so excited. And you guys know that when you ring my doorbell, Mabel freaks out and gets all excited and runs to the door. That's why. That didn't start. She didn't do that until our first Halloween in this house. Aww. And ever since then, she used to ignore the doorbell. But ever since then, whenever anyone comes to the door, so just know that when you come to my door and you ring the bell and you're not a child in a cute costume, Mabel is disappointed.
That's too bad. Mabel just needs to see our childlikeness at heart.
Yes. And it's just so cute because then the kids get to see Mabel, and it really is. It's an easy way to invite people into your space just for a moment and to look each other in the eye and speak to each other.
It is. I've met neighbors I never thought I'd meet because they were kind and out and offering. And let's face it, Halloween candy is expensive. These people are giving away a lot of money when they're handing out candy.
It's true.
I'm looking at the prices. I'm like, what in the what?
Yeah.
$75+ if you live in a heavily trafficked area.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, all that to say, that's my little story. I think I understand both sides of the coin. I think, thankfully, because I kind of came from both sides. But I definitely fall in the side of kind of trick-or-treating, done well, observing the holiday, especially if you observe All Saints Day and All Souls Day after, is it gives kind of like Matthew was saying, a much bigger picture of what life and death really mean, what community really means, what being a human really means.
Yeah.
Fear and not being afraid. So it's fear and then not being afraid of the devil because of Christ's victory. Those are all things that can come into focus when we actually observe Halloween in some way, shape, or fashion.
Right.
So that is my 2 cents. But whatever it is, listener, I hope this was engaging and fun and that you learned something, because I did as I was doing my research, and I've just learned enough over the years to start thinking Halloween's kind of fun, people.
It is. And I like the word observe, observe Halloween. I think that's an important distinction, because really pay attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there is nothing necessarily to fear.
Yeah.
Unless you go into the whole corrupt thing, but
No intentions.
Right.
All right, friends. Well, things are definitely winding down here at the Anselm Society Digital Pub. I don't know if we'll find out who that headless horseman was, but at least we know
Those brown bones.
At least we know it was not Matthew. So, our fire is down to embers, the customers are trundling home, and you have polished off your final glass. Once again, Believe to See is a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. To find out more about the Anselm Society, please visit us at anselmsociety.org. And while you are at it, please rate and review the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.